All right, so last video we got done forging this. Now we're going to go ahead and clean up the profile and flatten out the handle so it can accept scales, and flatten out these bevels, true them up, and go ahead and define these plunge lines, and also filing in these swedges right here. So you'll notice that a lot of the scale is gone, and the reason why that is because I left this in vinegar overnight. So I just took a Tupperware, filled it so that the vinegar was over the forged knife, left it in there overnight, and the vinegar ate away a lot of the scale. Now you can just keep doing this until all the scale is gone, but it's not really necessary. And honestly, for your guys' sake, I'm not going to do that so I can put out this video sooner. It's just better if you can get some of the scale off. Because the files that you're going to use will go through the scale, but it's just going to dull them really quickly. And we want to obviously get the most use out of the file as we can, because we're trying to save money with this build. So, all right. So first I'm going to take a marker, and then I'm going to kind of plan out and think about how I actually want the final profile to be. So let's do that. All right, so we have the knife. We're going to be doing up the final profile. I'm going to be doing it initially with the soapstone, which isn't required, but I like using it because, if I screw up a line or I want to take the profile in a different direction, I can just wipe it off with my hand vice using acetone. And then once I'm happy with the drawing, then I'll go over it with some permanent marker. All right, so I typically like to not have a lumpy edge. So we're going to go ahead and smooth that out. That's kind of a no-brainer. With this clip portion, I wanted it to be a little bit upward curving, not too much, because I kind of want to try and stick, somewhat to what I forged. Have that tip or that edge meet that clip right up in there. So not too much that we're taking off over here. I like having more of an aggressive heel. And also, I typically undersize this area, so it's a little bit too tight for my hand, and that's because normally what I'll do is I'll draw the heel back farther than I need to, so I can kind of come in here just a little bit more, have an aggressive little finger notch, and then come straight down with that heel. Looks aggressive, feels great. And it's just what I like to do. Also, with the forging, you will most likely, your spine won't flow as well as you want it to. So as I said, I kind of want it to have a little bit of a downward curve, and we're not going to be taking too much off the spine. I'm just getting that basic idea of what I'm trying to go for, because one of the things you want to remember is these lines they're more of guidelines, they're more suggestions than anything. Don't feel like just because you drew a line that you have to go to it or go with it completely. You may be in the middle of filing and completely change your mind and decide to go a whole different direction, and that's totally okay. So let's see. See, like right here, I'm not really liking that. Handle's looking a little skinny, so I might take out just a bit of that little downward curve. Maybe something like that. I'm liking that look pretty well, so let's go ahead and hit it up with the marker. Alright, so we have that basic profile now done in the marker. We have some guidelines to go to. Now it's the super fun part, which is going to be the filing. So here's a little bit of a closer look at kind of what we're dealing with. You can see we do have quite a bit of material to file away. but that's all right, that's part of it. So let's get to that. All right, so first I'm gonna start right here. Again, you don't have to do this, you don't need a leg vise for this, just any sort of vise will do. This just happens to be my more secure vise as far as vibration for the camera, so this is the one that we're gonna use. And also, one of the things I'm gonna be doing is something called draw filing. And what I'm gonna be doing is I'm actually going to be using this sharp edge right here, and I'm gonna be pulling down at an angle like that. And that's actually gonna cut a lot deeper than if I were to just go flat up against the, up the spine. And we're gonna be doing draw filing a lot, just because it is a super aggressive way to take off material. All right, so I can't find my, actually, yes I can, it's right here. I was gonna say I couldn't find my round file, and this is what I'm gonna be using the round file on, is that swedge. So it took absolutely forever to get that spine done. And it's definitely going to take you forever as well. One of the things you want to do though is, as you do this, you want to just ensure that you keep checking. Keep checking your lines. Just make sure that, you know, if you do choose to stay with, you know, your initial design, that you're not over filing, which it's easy to do when it gets super monotonous and you just keep filing and filing and filing and you're not really thinking, and then all of a sudden this portion is a little lower than you wanted it. Now we're going to move to that swedge. And because it has this curve, I can do the initial part right here with my flat file, and I can do some of it right here with the flat file, because this is going to take off more material because it's brand new. But I am going to have to either come to something like this, would probably be the easiest, but if you're trying to save money, then you can still do it with this round file. And technically you can do it with this, it's just going to take you a lot more time and you'll have to be a lot more careful. And you may not get the result that you want if this is your first time filing something. So let's get that started. To file out this edge. Now this is going to be an extremely important part, simply because that black line that I drew is not perfectly, what would you say, curved, or it doesn't have an even graduated curve, if that makes sense. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be filing, I'll file it to that black line, and then I'm going to essentially put it on a flat surface and see if I'm going to be able to actually use it the way that I need to. Are there any low spots? Are there any gaps? Things of that nature. Now with a file, it's just going to, you're going to have to take off a little bit and check, take off a little bit. You don't want to go super ham on it, because then you're just going to be chasing it. But the black line is a good reference point to begin and make quick work, hopefully. So that tip was kind of a pain in the ass, but as you saw, I just stuck the tip upside down, essentially like this, and just got it. The closer you get to it, the harder you can press on it and really dig into it without risking bending the steel. And the same thing with this. So I'm gonna put it in the jaws like that, because I'm gonna be getting this angle, and then I'm gonna be getting in there with that round file right there, and then flat file right here. So let's go ahead and hit the back of that heel. All right, time for that the last stretch. Got to hit up here, which we're pretty close to already, and then this is going to be the irritating part. All right, so you can see the profile. That's our final profile that we're going with. Looks pretty cool. You can see some of these lines right here that I didn't go to. Those are just some areas I was kind of like I kind of like where it is now, especially in the heel right here, or sorry, the butt of the knife. I didn't want to take it in as far just because it was looking a little skinny, but that looks pretty cool. Overall, overall I like the feel of it. So I may need to, now that I look at it, I may need to file that a little bit more. Kind of comes down. It's not as smooth as I'd like it, so I'll file that right now. Once I get that done, then we'll go ahead and move on to flattening the tang and drilling the holes. All right, now we got to flatten out this tang. And all I'm really trying to do is from here to here, I'm trying to create, obviously a flat surface, but I can tell where all the low spots are. As long as I hold my, my file nice and flat, and I have a good flat that I'm working on, as long as I hold my file nice and flat, all the little dips and such within all the low spots within the scale will reveal themselves. There'll be the stuff that's not shiny, and essentially my goal is to make this entire tang shiny, and that'll allow me to know that, hey, it's most likely flat, and then I can check it on my anvil. The anvil is probably not the best way to do it. A granite surface would probably be better, like a granite block, but when it comes to kind of saving money, you already have an anvil, so you can use that to give you somewhat of an idea. All right, so I'm going to start draw filing like that, and it's going to be taken off the scale. So, and just imagine if there was a ton of scale on this. This would be an absolute pain in the ass. But you can already see some of the high spots that we're taking off. That's it for that side. I just spared you the horribleness that is getting all of that scale off. So don't hold any illusion that you will not be working during this knife build. You will absolutely be working your ass off. I'm like sweating up a storm right now, and actually the steel is pretty hot, even though it wasn't grinding. So just be careful with that. Even though you're only filing, if you're filing pretty hard and also fast, it's going to create that friction, so it's going to get hot. All right, now to the bevels. All right, so I'm going to be using these right here. I actually decided instead of moving on to the bevels, I might as well, seeing how the tang is clean, I might as well get the pinholes drilled. So I'm using this DeWalt. Doesn't have to be, or sorry, it's not DeWalt, it's a Black & Decker. Doesn't have to be something super expensive. Just something with decent power. And essentially what you're going to do is kind of like what I was explaining earlier when it came to filing on that tip. I want to put it as close as I can to the jaws so that it's giving it as much support as possible, because this portion right here is pretty thin. And so we just want to be careful about that. And typically what I do when it comes to setting up pins, especially with the Hunter like this, is I'll tend to put a pin here, 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 and then one in the front. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll have 5 pins. All right, and that's number 5. So we got all 5 holes drilled. Now we'll move on to the bevels. All right, now this is gonna be the annoying part. Doing this while trying to maintain these little plunge lines here. I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to keep this as a nice little swoop, but we'll see what we can do. But essentially what I'm going to try to do is take this pretty close to sharp, simply because once this becomes hardened, it's going to be an absolute pain in the ass to continue to file. So I'm pretty much going to take this to its final dimension, and then we'll be able to heat treat it. See already there, you can see all those high spots. Got a little bit low here and here. This also is by doing this is a good way to see how clean your forging was. So it looks like I did a lot more forging in this area than around here. So that's just something for me to, keep in mind for next time. And now that I think about it, there's probably something we should have done prior to doing this, and I'm going to do it now before I forget. So if you look at the edge, we got some decent amount of thickness, but what we don't want to do is, while we're here, is to file too much on this side and have the edge be out of line. I mean, we worked super hard in creating this, centered edge, so why would we want to ruin it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and clamp this upside down like this, and I'm going to create a 45-degree angle bevel that meets up to a point. That way my final edge will be centered, and then as I get rid of this scale right here, I will be able to essentially just bring up that 45-degree bevel up to the top, if that makes sense. And it'll make sense when you see it. All right, so I just went ahead and did that really quick. You can see the little bevel that I put on here, and then on that side. So now we're gonna go ahead and go back to doing the bevel.
Do you feel it?
That was an absolute nightmare, but it is done. Both sides are done. Now it is time to move over to doing the swedge. So I'm just going to put a 45 on either side, and it's just going to be a small one. It's going to be a false edge. It's not going to be super sharp, so let's get that done. All right, so you can see a pretty stark difference in the blade now. It's got some surface rust on it, and that's all right. It's because I was filing yesterday for about 4 hours to get to this point right here. So I had to take a break, had to go to sleep. So now we're gonna continue. Where we left off is we gotta do this swedge area. I'm gonna be using this round file just because this does have a curve. I wanna keep the integrity of that curve, so that's why I'm using a round file. You can technically do it with a straight file. It's just gonna be really hard to keep this in the same shape as before. At least with my skill it is, which is why I use a round file. So, and all I'm doing is I'm going at a 45-degree angle, and I'm just going to, essentially, if you look at the blade, essentially I'm going to be bringing that clip down so that it lines up with this portion of the spine. So it'll come down right here and come that way. And it'll taper towards the tip. And you'll see what I mean once we... You can see as well that my angle's starting to get a lot more drastic over here, simply because I'm not trying to bring it to the center
of the swedge. I'm actually...
and I'm just checking it periodically just to make sure that it's got a nice even line. And I didn't dig too deep into any one area. All right, so that's one side done. All right. So same thing, but instead of coming down like this, like I was on the other side, now I'm going to be coming up. All right, and it's not perfect. You'll see that I didn't quite get as straight as I did on this side when it comes to this little area right there, but that's all right. We'll be able to clean that up with hand sanding, and we're gonna actually hand sand this next. All right, so before we start hand sanding, just wanted to go over some of the stuff I'll be using. There are some people that don't believe that you need to use WD-40. I know Jason Knight is a huge proponent of just using the sandpaper dry. I just like using it like this. One, just because the oil allows me to kind of see how the scratch pattern is, as well as I feel as though it keeps my sandpaper unclogged for longer. But you know, to each his own. You know, some people don't use it. I tend to use it, but it is an extra expense, and it's not 100% needed. I just like it. So I'll be using WD-40, and then this is one of the things that I was telling you that you do not want to skimp on. You know, first was the steel. Also, the next one later on will be the epoxy. You don't want to buy cheap stuff for. And then the sandpaper. I use Indasa Rhino Wet, and I am currently out of 120, which is horrible. This is all I have left of the 120, so we're gonna have to try to make that work. I need to order some more. But Indasa is pretty expensive. That little packet of 50 sheets cost me about probably a little over 50 bucks. And yes, that can get expensive, but man, is it worth it. Buying sandpaper at like the big box store like Lowe's is not the way to go. You're gonna spend so much more extra time hand sanding and so much more extra time or money having to buy more and more sandpaper. It's gonna feel like you never have enough. And that's just because the abrasion or the abrasives come off. It's just really low quality, even if it says that it's you know, for something like steel. They suck, and you're going to end up spending more money in the long run, you know, getting cheap ass sandpaper, and you're going to waste a lot of time. And time really is the reason why I go with Indasa, just because, yeah, I don't want to be wasting my time. So I'm going to be using a piece of G10, or I think this is actually my Carta. Yeah, I'm going to be using my Carta, and the reason why is because I want to have a really sharp line right here, and my Carta at G10 or even steel just has like no give. It's a lot harder than wood. Wood has some give, so if you want sharp lines, wood is not the way to go. But I'll be using this piece of ivory micarta and hand sanding. So as you can see, the scratch pattern is already going in one direction. That's us going down this way with the file so that we could get that nice little plunge line. So what we're going to do is we're going to come straight down this way. And the reason why we're going to do this is because we have such a defined scratch pattern going diagonally that once I start bringing it forward, I'm going to know when all of those scratches are out, because as I look at it, and typically what I do is I look at the scratch pattern in different lights, or different angles rather, and I try to have more of a bright light underneath it, over on top of it, and I'll change the angle of my body and trying to see, you know, is there any remaining diagonal scratches? That's what you're looking for, and that's what you're going to look for every single time you go up in a grit. You're going to change the direction of your scratch pattern. So again, scratch pattern is going diagonally. When I start sanding right now, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to change my angle, and I'm going to look at that scratch pattern to see, is there any more diagonal scratches? And I'm not going to stop sanding until all of those diagonal scratches are gone, and all I can see are those forward and back scratches. And then when I go up to 320, then I'm going to make it diagonal again, and I'm going to keep hand sanding until all those forward and back scratches are completely gone. And that's how you know that you're getting all the scratches out. And here's the thing, even if you're a beginner, you might as well get into the habit of having good, or get into the habit of having good habits. You do not want to be the maker that leaves, you know, file marks in your knife simply because you're so excited to see the end product, that your end product, yes, you get there faster, but it ends up looking like shit because you didn't do it correctly. So, and the thing is too, is especially All right, so this is what I wanted to I wanted to show you a closer view of this. So you can see how I have a lot of those back and forth lines, you know, coming this way, that way. But I'm using the light, and you can see it in the camera where I still need to get, there's still scratches that need to come out. And I'm constantly checking that just to ensure. And this is going to be tough because to create that plunge line, I accidentally rocked way too hard down here. So yeah, so that's going to take, those are some pretty deep scratches, unfortunately. But, you know, the things that you lack in skill, you can always typically make up for with throwing time at it, which is not always the best solution, but, you know, if that's all you got, that's all you got. So, all right, let's continue hand sanding. Alright, so this is what we got right now. I will say hand sanding on unhardened steel is way faster than doing it on hardened steel. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer, but I hadn't really done it before. I haven't really prepped a blade like this. Normally when I grind it, I'll grind it to around 120, and then I'll quench it. I haven't had any issues with that, but I'm also doing a little bit of an experiment here. I want to see if by taking it up to 320 and quenching, if I saved myself a little bit of time with hand sanding. We'll see how that experiment goes, but you know, right now this is what we got. Let's get ready to heat treat it.